A reverse query, as the name would imply, is just the opposite of a forward lookup query. Most of the time throughout this chapter and throughout your work with DNS, you're going to be concerned with configuring forward lookup zones, which resolve host names to IP addresses. Well, a reverse query resolves an IP address into a host name. Do humans use this very much? Not too often. But a lot of internet utilities use reverse lookup queries to find out information about what kind of traffic is entering a particular site or a particular computer. This is done with a new domain, or not a new domain, an additional domain called the inadder.arpa domain. And the reason why this domain is necessary is because IP addresses and fully qualified domain names are read differently. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Here we have an IP address. An IP address, if we were to draw the flow, it is read from right to left, from general to more specific. In other words, here's our network portion, here is our host portion. Our host portion is going to be furthest to the right. If we were to draw this same line of general to specific, however, on a fully qualified domain name, it would go the opposite way. Here are the big domains, root level, top level domain space, second level domains, subdomains, and then finally a host, so that a fully qualified domain name flows from right to left. So if we're trying to resolve an IP address to a domain name in the existing DNS hierarchy, we would have to look through each and every domain throughout the hierarchy to try to find out what host has this IP address. That is, unless there is a special domain set up, and that is indeed the case. The inverse address.arpa domain, and ARPA is the Advanced Research Project Agency, the Department of Defense that really started the internet. These domains have been created to facilitate quick reverse lookup queries. What this does is that it turns around the IP address. It flips the order of the IP address so that it becomes consistent with the rest of the DNS namespace. So if we're trying to find the host name for this IP address, it becomes a query for the host 45 in the domain 3, in the domain 168, in the domain 192, in the inverse address.arpa domain. And if we were to look at it in a hierarchy schematic like this, our name servers would query the root server, ARPA, inadder, and then 192, 168, 3, and then finally look for the record for 45 and try to map that, try to look up the host record for that address. Are reverse queries required? Again, not typically by humans. By some utilities, yes, and in fact, without a reverse lookup query, a properly configured reverse lookup zone, certain utilities like NSLookup won't work the way they should. So it's more important for day-to-day administration that you configure correctly your forward lookup zones so that forward queries are successful, but it's also somewhat important to understand what a reverse query is all about and how this inadder ARPA domain is set up. And it's set up by reversing the order of an IP address.